There's a sound your brain makes when it realizes help is impossibly far away. A small, animal noise that escapes before you can stop it. The people in these stories made that sound. Some of them are still making it. Welcome to Verified Fears. What comes next isn't fiction. It's what happens when isolation stops being peaceful and becomes something else entirely. 10 accounts from the edges of the map. 10 places where phone signals die and reality gets flexible. We've arranged them carefully, building from the unsettling to the unbearable. Each one different. Each one designed to crawl under your skin and stay there. So here's your choice. You can click away now, go watch something comfortable, something safe. Or you can stay with us as we descend into the 10 most disturbing, middle-of-nowhere horror stories ever documented. Stories that will change how you think about empty roads, silent forests, and that cabin rental you've been considering. Fair warning. The comment section is already filling with people who regret watching number 7. Number 10 has a 67% completion rate. Most viewers don't make it that far. Will you? Let's find out. If you survive to the end, drop a comment with a single emoji that captures how you're feeling. The most common one from last video was the eyes emoji. Wide, unblinking, haunted. Subscribe to Verified Fears if you want more stories from places where screaming is pointless. And remember to hit that notification bell. Because some stories are better experienced when you're not expecting them. Now, let's talk about what really happens when you're truly, completely alone. I want you to imagine something with me. You're 40 miles off the coast of Maine, standing on a rock barely large enough to call an island. Behind you is a lighthouse that stopped guiding ships 30 years ago. Around you is the Atlantic Ocean, stretching in every direction until it becomes sky. The nearest human being is a 40-minute helicopter ride away, weather permitting. And the weather, in February, rarely permits. Now imagine you chose to be there, alone, for 8 weeks. That's what I did in the winter of 2019. I'm a marine biologist, and when the opportunity came to study seal populations from a decommissioned lighthouse station, I actually felt lucky. The station had been automated for decades, but the living quarters were intact. Solar panels, satellite internet, enough supplies for 3 months. Everything I needed to focus on my research without distraction. I arrived on a Tuesday. The helicopter pilot who dropped me off looked at the station, looked at me, and said something I didn't understand at the time. He said, "The quiet out here isn't really quiet. You'll see." The first 3 days were exactly what I'd hoped for. Pure, beautiful isolation. I'd wake up, make coffee, spend hours watching the seal colonies through my binoculars. I documented their behavior, recorded their calls, took notes. Every evening, I'd film a video log for my research archive. Just me, talking to the camera about what I'd observed that day. Professional, routine, normal. On the 4th day, I noticed the echo. I was recording my evening log, talking about a particularly aggressive male seal I'd been tracking, when I heard it. My own voice, speaking the same words, but coming from somewhere else in the station. Not quite simultaneous, maybe half a second behind me, like a delayed playback. I stopped talking. The echo stopped too. I checked the equipment. Nothing wrong. No speakers accidentally on, no phone recording. I went back to my video log, and the echo didn't return. I convinced myself it was the wind, or the station's odd acoustics, or fatigue playing tricks on my ears. That night, I played back the day's video log before bed. That's when my stomach dropped. On the recording, I'm sitting in my chair, talking about the seals. But I'm also saying things I never said, in my voice, with my inflections, but words I have no memory of speaking. I'm talking about preparing the station, about waiting for the right conditions, about how much easier it is when there's only one. I watched it 3 times. There's no edit, no glitch. It's me, speaking sentences I never formed, discussing things I never thought about. And the worst part? I'm smiling. This version of me on the recording is smiling while saying these things, and I never smile in my video logs. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the main room with every light on, listening to the station creak and settle around me, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. Corrupted file. Some kind of AI glitch in the recording software. Stress hallucination. Anything but what it actually looked like. On the 5th day, I found recordings I didn't make. They were in my video log folder, time-stamped from the previous night. 3 files, each about 2 minutes long. I didn't want to open them. I physically felt my hand shaking over the mouse. But you have to know, don't you? You have to see. The first file showed me sleeping. The camera was pointed at my bed, and there I was, clearly asleep, breathing steadily. But I never set up that shot. I never pointed the camera at my bed. The second file was me sitting in the chair where I record my logs. But it was the middle of the night. I could see the darkness in the windows behind me. And I was talking in my voice about the research, about the seals, about how the observation period is proceeding as expected. My eyes looked wrong, too wide, too focused on the camera. The third file was only 30 seconds long. It was me standing at the lighthouse window, looking out at the ocean, just standing there. Completely still. For 30 seconds, not even swaying, not adjusting my stance, just staring. And then, right before the video ended, I turned to look directly at the camera and said, "He doesn't know yet." I checked the timestamps. These videos were recorded at 2:47 a.m., 3:15 a.m., and 3:33 a.m. I was asleep. I know I was asleep because I remember going to bed at midnight and waking up at 7. There's no sleepwalking in my medical history. I don't have any conditions that would cause this. But here's what made me want to swim 40 miles back to shore. When I checked my camera's battery log, it showed the camera had been active for 4 hours and 17 minutes during the night. Not just these 3 recordings. Hours of operation I couldn't account for. On the 6th day, I stopped filming video logs. I was too afraid of what they might show. Instead, I just focused on staying awake, staying aware, staying me. I wedged my door shut. I kept the lights on. I watched the seals during the day and watched myself at night. But I got tired. You can't fight sleep forever. And on that 6th night, despite every effort, I felt myself slipping away around 3 a.m. The last thing I remember is my head drooping forward in my chair. I woke up at my desk. The camera was on, pointed at me. And there was a new video file. I'm not going to tell you I was brave enough to watch it immediately. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at that file, before I finally opened it. It was footage of me sleeping in my chair. The timestamps showed it started exactly when I fell asleep. For the first minute, nothing happened. Just me, unconscious, head down. Then, at the 1-minute mark, I lifted my head. But my eyes were still closed. With my eyes closed, I stood up. I walked to the window. I spent 3 minutes staring out at the ocean in the dark, eyes shut, swaying slightly like seaweed in current. Then I walked back to the desk, sat down, and opened my eyes. That's when the video me started talking to the camera. Started talking to me, the future me who would watch this. "You're going to want to leave," I said to myself. "You're going to think something's wrong. But you've been wrong about what's happening here. You're not losing control. You're not experiencing psychosis. You're just finally paying attention to what's always been here." The video me smiled. The station has a purpose. The Lighthouse guided ships. Now it guides other things. And you've been so helpful. Every video log, every word you speak, it's learning, getting better. Soon it won't need you to be asleep anymore. Then the video me looked directly into the camera, and I heard something that made my blood stop. "From somewhere else in the station," my voice called out. The same voice, the same inflection, calling, "Hello?" like I was looking for someone. The video me kept smiling. "See? It's calling for you. You should answer. It's only polite." The video ended. I checked the timestamp. This was recorded 4 hours ago. It was now 7 a.m. I'd been sitting at this desk, awake, for the last 3 hours, with no memory of watching this video before. Which meant either I'd already watched it and forgotten, or something else had been sitting in this chair, watching it in my place. I grabbed my emergency radio and called for extraction. No one was coming for 6 more weeks, but I screamed into that radio about needing immediate evacuation. The response was calm, professional. They'd send the helicopter when weather permitted. Probably 3 days. I still had 3 days. On the 7th day, I heard my voice calling from the lighthouse tower. I was in the living quarters. The voice was coming from above me, from the lamp room at the top. My voice, yelling down, "Hey, hey, come up here. You need to see this." I didn't go up. I sat in the corner with a flare gun and waited. But here's the thing that kept me awake, that still keeps me awake. I could hear footsteps in the tower, climbing up, then climbing down, over and over. Someone was up there, pacing, walking in circles around the lamp. And whatever it was wearing my boots. I could tell by the sound. The helicopter came on the 8th day. When they found me, I was still in that corner, flare gun in hand. They said I kept asking them if they could hear it, the voice calling from upstairs. They couldn't hear anything. Before I left, I asked the pilot to check the lamp room. He came back down, shaking his head. Empty. Nothing there. But I saw his face. He'd found something he wasn't telling me about. 3 months later, my research grant sent me the automated backup files from the station. Every video log I'd made was in there, plus the ones I didn't make. There were 47 recordings from my 8 days at the station. I only made 3. I've watched them all now, every single one. I had to know. In the last video, time-stamped from the morning the helicopter arrived, I'm standing in the lamp room. I'm setting up the camera carefully, adjusting the angle. And then I walk to the edge of the railing and look down at the living quarters below, where I know I was huddled in the corner. The video me waves. Just a small wave, like saying goodbye to an old friend. Then I mouth something to the camera. I've watched it 100 times, trying to read the lips. I think it says, "I'm staying." They're sending another researcher to the station next month. I tried to warn them. I called, I emailed, I even drove to the university to tell them in person. They thanked me for my concern and suggested I might benefit from talking to someone about the isolation trauma I experienced. The new researcher is young, eager, excited about the opportunity for uninterrupted study. I hope they don't film video logs. I really hope they don't. Because something out there is getting very, very good at being human, and it's had 40 years of lighthouse keepers to practice on. The only question I can't answer, the one that keeps me up at night: when did it stop being me making those recordings? Which day did I stop being myself and start being something else? Was it day 4, when I noticed the echo? Day 5, when I found the recordings? Or was it earlier, maybe even before the helicopter dropped me off, when the pilot warned me about the quiet not really being quiet? I look at my reflection sometimes and wonder if the person looking back is the same one who went to that lighthouse. I talk and listen to my own voice, trying to detect some difference, some wrongness. But I sound exactly like myself. And that's what terrifies me most. You ever notice how footprints tell a story? As a border patrol agent, that's half my job. Reading the desert floor like a book. How many people, how long ago, which direction they're headed, how desperate they are. After 12 years working the Sonoran, I can tell you things about a person just from how their boot hits the sand. But I'd never seen footprints walking backward. Not until that morning in July 2021. It was 6 a.m., temperature already climbing past 90, and I was doing a routine sweep along a stretch of the Tohono O'odham Reservation. This is the killing ground of the border. 120 degrees by afternoon, no shade, no water. Nothing but creosote and sand and sun that wants you dead. We find bodies out here every summer. People who thought they could make the crossing. The track started near an old cattle fence. Fresh, maybe 3 hours old, and they were walking backward. I stopped my truck and got out to look closer. These weren't someone walking forward and dragging their feet. These were deliberate, careful steps, heel to toe in reverse. Like someone was taking great pains to walk backward through the desert. And there were a lot of them. I counted at least 12 different shoe prints, all walking backward, all headed deeper into the hottest part of the desert. Now, smugglers do weird things to throw us off. I've seen people strap carpet to their shoes, walk in single file, even wear their boots backward on their feet. But this was different. This was precise, intentional. And it was leading toward a section of desert where nobody goes voluntarily. No trails, no roads, no water sources. Just 50 miles of nothing until you hit the next highway. I should have called it in right there. Should have waited for backup. But after 12 years, you develop instincts, and my instincts were screaming that something was wrong, that whoever made these tracks was in trouble. So I followed them. For 2 hours, I tracked those backward footprints through the sand. The temperature hit 110, then 115. The track stayed consistent. 12 people walking backward, never stopping to rest. I found no other signs. No water bottles, no discarded clothes, no places where they'd sat down. Just those backward prints, leading me deeper into the emptiness. Then I found the cache. It was hidden under a creosote bush, covered with a tarp and rocks. Standard water cache, the kind humanitarian groups leave for migrants. But this one had been opened. All 12-gallon jugs were empty, scattered around the site. And written in the sand next to them, in English, were 2 words. Don't listen. That's when I heard the screaming. It was coming from somewhere ahead, maybe a quarter mile. High-pitched, agonized, the kind of sound that tells you someone is dying badly. My training kicked in. I grabbed my medical kit, radioed my position, and ran toward the sound. But the screaming never got closer. I ran for 10 minutes straight in that heat, following the sound, and it stayed the same distance away. Same volume, same intensity. Like it was moving at exactly my speed, staying just out of reach. The backward footprints continued ahead of me, and I realized they were leading me toward the screaming. That's when my radio crackled. Dispatch, asking for confirmation of my position. I gave it, breathing hard, and told them about the screaming. There was a long pause. Then the dispatcher said something that made my blood go cold. "Sir, we're receiving your transmission, but we're also receiving another transmission on your frequency from your radio ID, and it's screaming." I stopped running. The screaming ahead of me stopped at the exact same moment. "What do you mean, another transmission?" I asked. "Your radio has been transmitting continuous screaming for the last 40 minutes. We thought it was interference, but it's definitely coming from your unit. Can you confirm you're not in distress?" I looked at my radio. It was off. I'd turned it off to save battery after my last check-in. But according to dispatch, it had been broadcasting the entire time I'd been tracking those footprints. I turned it back on, and immediately I heard it through the speaker, the same screaming I'd been following, now coming from my own radio. But I could still hear it in the distance too, coming from ahead of me and from my own equipment simultaneously. "Dispatch, I'm heading back to my vehicle. Something's not right out here." But when I turned around, the backward footprints were gone. The desert floor behind me was smooth, undisturbed, like I'd walked across pavement. No trace of my own boots, no trace of the tracks I'd been following. Just empty sand stretching back toward where my truck should have been. I couldn't see my truck anymore. I'd only come maybe 3 miles, but the desert is flat here. You can see for 10 miles easy. My truck should have been visible, a white dot in the tan landscape. There was nothing, just heat shimmer and sky. The screaming started again, but now it was behind me, where my truck should have been. I started walking, fast at first, then running, my boots slipping in the sand, the heat pressing down like a physical weight. The screaming followed, always behind me, always the same distance. My radio kept broadcasting it, a loop of agony that my dispatcher could hear, but I couldn't stop. That's when I found the camp. It was in a small depression, hidden from casual view. Evidence of 12 people. Water bottles, food wrappers, backpacks arranged in a circle. And in the center, a cell phone on a portable speaker, playing a recording on loop. The recording was screaming. I picked up the phone. The recording had been playing for 72 hours straight, according to the timestamp. Just screaming, over and over. No words, no context. And written in the sand around it, in the same handwriting as before, was a longer message. "It makes you walk to it. Don't follow the sound. It walked us backwards so we couldn't see where we were going." I counted the backpacks. 12 of them. But I'd been following 12 sets of footprints, which meant everyone who'd made those prints had arrived here, at this camp. They'd left this warning. They'd left the recording playing. But there were only 11 sets of footprints leaving the site. 11 people had walked away from this camp. 12 had arrived. I looked at the footprints leaving. They were normal now, walking forward, headed back toward the border. Like whatever had made them walk backward had released them once they'd reached this spot. The screaming on my radio stopped. The desert went silent. That deep, pressing silence that feels like it has weight. And in that silence, I heard something else. Something that made every instinct I had scream at me to run. Breathing, close behind me. The slow, steady breathing of someone standing right there. I turned around. Nothing. Just empty desert and heat shimmer. but I could still hear it. Breathing at my back, patient and calm, like something was waiting for me to do what the others had done. Waiting for me to start walking backward, away from my vehicle, deeper into the desert where the heat would do its work. I ran. I ran toward where I thought my truck was, my rational mind trying to calculate angles and distances, while my animal brain just wanted to move, move, move. The breathing followed. Not footsteps. I never heard footsteps. Just breathing. Keeping pace. Staying right behind me no matter how fast I ran. I found my truck 40 minutes later. I'd only been 3 miles out, just like I'd calculated. But it had taken me 40 minutes of running to cover that distance. When I checked my GPS log later, it showed I'd walked in a nearly perfect circle, passing within 100 yards of my truck 7 times without seeing it. The breathing stopped when I reached the vehicle. Just cut off mid-exhale, like someone had flipped a switch. I reported everything to dispatch. They sent a recovery team to find the camp, but they found nothing. No backpacks, no water cache, no cell phone. The sand where I'd seen the warning messages was smooth and undisturbed. The only thing they confirmed was the backward footprints. 12 sets, walking in reverse, ending exactly where I'd said. But here's what keeps me awake. Here's what I can't rationalize or explain away. When they analyzed my GPS log, they found something impossible. During those 2 hours I was tracking the footprints, my GPS showed I was stationary. Not moving at all. Just sitting in one spot in the desert for 2 hours while the temperature climbed past 120 degrees. But I was moving. I know I was moving. I followed those tracks for miles. Which means either the GPS was wrong or I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that looked like the desert, felt like the desert, but wasn't quite the same place. 3 weeks later, we found a body. Male, mid-30s, Mexican national. He'd been dead for approximately 72 hours, died of dehydration. He was lying face down in the sand, and his position was strange. Arms reaching forward, legs extended back. Like he'd been crawling. But the tracks around his body showed he'd walked to that spot backward. Right up until the moment he collapsed and died, he'd been walking in reverse. His cell phone was in his pocket. The last thing in his browser history was a looping video. Just 10 seconds of desert footage, the same view repeated over and over. And in the background, barely audible, was breathing. We traced the other 11 people from that group. Found 10 of them. They'd all made it across, all survived the crossing. When immigration interviewed them, they all told the same story. There had been 12 of them when they started. But somewhere in the desert, they'd heard screaming. They'd followed it. And when they came to their senses, they were walking backward, unable to stop, unable to turn around. One of them had the idea to leave their phones playing recordings, warnings for anyone else who might follow. They'd walked backward for 6 hours before whatever was controlling them let go. When they finally stopped and turned around, there were only 11 of them. The 12th was gone. They never saw what happened to him. But they all described the same thing, the breathing behind them, the presence that walked when they walked, stopped when they stopped, and never made a sound except for that steady, patient breathing. I asked them which one was missing. They looked at each other, confused, started counting on their fingers, getting agitated. Because they all remembered there being 12 of them. They all had clear memories of the 12th person. But not one of them could tell me anything about him. Not his name, not his face, not a single identifying detail. He existed in their memories as a blank spot, a placeholder. The 12th person who'd always been there but had never really been there at all. I still work that section of the border. I still find tracks. But sometimes, early in the morning when the sand is fresh and smooth, I find them walking backward, never following them anymore. I just call it in, mark the location, and drive away. Because I learned something that day in the Sonoran. Sometimes tracks don't tell you where someone's going. Sometimes they tell you where something is leading them. And sometimes the desert isn't empty at all. It's just waiting for someone to hear the screaming and follow it into the heat. I haven't heard it since that day. The screaming, I mean. But sometimes, when I'm out on patrol in the early morning, I hear breathing. Just for a second, just long enough to make me check my mirrors. There's never anything there. But the breathing is patient. It can wait. And the desert has all the time in the world. Let me ask you something. How well do you trust your memory? Not your memory of childhood or what you had for breakfast last week. I mean your memory of right now. The people in your life. The room you're sitting in. Your absolute certainty that reality is what you think it is. Because I used to trust mine completely. Then I spent 6 months in Antarctica during the polar night. And I learned that memory is just another thing the darkness can break. I'm a glaciologist. In July 2022, I was part of a 5-person research team stationed at a remote outpost about 200 miles from McMurdo. Our job was to study ice core samples during the winter over period, that's 6 months of continuous darkness at the bottom of the world. No sun, no rotation of personnel, no leaving until the spring thaw makes flights possible again. 5 of us. 2 climatologists, a station engineer, a medical officer, and me. We'd trained together for 8 months. We knew each other's habits, quirks, annoying tendencies. You have to when you're going to spend half a year in a space smaller than most houses, where the outside temperature hits 80 below, and the nearest other humans are a 5-hour flight away. The thing about polar night is that it does something to time. Without the sun, your circadian rhythm starts to drift. Days blur together. You lose track of what month it is, what week, sometimes what hour. We kept to a strict schedule to combat this. Meals at the same time, work shifts, mandatory social periods. Structure was everything. On day 43 of darkness, I came into the common room for breakfast, and there were 6 of us at the table. I stopped in the doorway and counted. The 2 climatologists sitting together like always, the engineer reading on his tablet, the medical officer pouring coffee, and someone else, sitting at the end of the table, eating oatmeal, looking completely at home. Here's the thing that made my brain stutter. I knew him. I had complete, solid memories of him being there the entire time. I could remember conversations we'd had, remember him helping me with equipment, remember his laugh and the way he always added too much sugar to his coffee. His face was familiar. His presence was normal. But I also knew, with absolute certainty, that we'd deployed as a team of 5. I sat down slowly, my mind trying to reconcile these 2 contradictory facts. Nobody else seemed to notice anything wrong. The conversation flowed around me. Something about a supply manifest. A joke about the coffee rations. And he participated naturally, adding comments, laughing at the right moments. I waited until we were alone in the corridor, caught him heading to the lab, and asked him directly, "How long have you been here?" He looked at me confused. "Same as everyone else. Since January. Are you feeling okay?" "Right, yeah, just tired." I let him go and went immediately to my room. I pulled out the deployment manifest, the official document we'd all signed before the helicopter dropped us at the station. 5 names, 5 signatures, 5 people authorized to be at this location. Then I pulled out my personal photos from deployment day, the official team photo we'd taken on the ice before entering the station for the first time. I'd looked at this photo a dozen times over the past 6 weeks. There were 6 people in it. 6 of us standing in front of the station in our cold weather gear, smiling at the camera. And I had memories of that photo being taken. I remembered the photographer, one of the helicopter crew, asking us to squeeze together. I remembered standing between the medical officer and him, this 6th person who shouldn't exist. I went to find the engineer, asked him casually how many people were stationed here. He looked at me like I was stupid. 6, including you. Why? Just checking my memory. Sometimes the darkness messes with me. Tell me about it, he said. I keep forgetting what day it is. I checked the supply manifests. All the food orders, the fuel calculations, the water consumption rates. Everything was calculated for 6 people. 6 beds in the dormitory. 6 lockers. 6 names on the duty roster. But I knew we'd deployed as 5. I knew it the same way you know your own name. It was a fundamental fact that existed underneath the memories, like bedrock under snow. I went to the medical officer, told her I was experiencing some confusion. Maybe the isolation was getting to me. Could she check the original deployment records? She pulled them up on her computer, read through them with me sitting right there. 6 names, 6 medical clearances, 6 psychological evaluations. She pointed to the 6th name and said, "Everything looks normal. You've all been cleared for winter over. Why, are you feeling symptomatic of something?" "No," I said. "No, I'm fine." But I wasn't fine, because the 6th name on that list was his name, and I could read it clearly, and I had memories of seeing that name before. But I also had this screaming certainty that it was wrong. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through every digital record I could access, every email, every log entry, every photo. They all showed 6 people. The station was designed for 6. The rotation schedule assumed 6. Even my own journal entries, written in my own handwriting, casually mentioned all 6 of us. But the deployment manifest, the physical paper copy we'd signed, only had 5 signatures. I brought this up at breakfast the next morning, put the manifest on the table and said, "This only has 5 signatures." Everyone leaned in to look. The climatologist shrugged. Must have missed getting his signature that day. We were rushing to load the helicopter, remember? "Yeah," the 6th person said. "I signed the digital copy, though. We made sure all the electronic records were complete." And the thing was, I did remember that. I remembered him signing the digital version on the tablet while we were doing final checks. The memory was clear and solid and completely real. Except it couldn't be. I started testing them, asking questions about our training period, about specific events, about details that I knew happened one way. And everyone's memories aligned. They all remembered 6 people at every stage. They all had stories that included him. They all treated his presence as absolute normal fact. And I was starting to doubt myself. Because human memory is unreliable. Because isolation does strange things to your brain. Because 6 people saying one thing and you saying another means you're probably wrong. But then I found the food. I was doing inventory in the storage room, and I counted the remaining supplies. We were exactly on track for 5 people. Not 6, 5. The consumption rate matched a 5-person team perfectly. which meant either we were eating less than we should, or there were only 5 people actually consuming food. I started watching him during meals. He ate. He chewed and swallowed and took normal portions. I saw the food go into his mouth. But when I checked the waste disposal later, there were only 5 people's worth of scraps. That's when I realized I'd never seen him eat anything that left waste. He ate oatmeal, drank coffee, had soup. Never anything with bones or peels or packaging that would need to be thrown away separately. I started paying attention to other things. His footsteps in the hallways, I could hear them, but they never left condensation on the cold floors like ours did. His breath in the colder sections of the station. I never saw it mist. His reflection in the windows. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't, depending on the angle. And he never went outside. We all did equipment checks, all took turns with external maintenance. But somehow, his name was never on the rotation for outside work. And when I looked back through the logs, he'd never been outside once in 6 weeks. I tried calling McMurdo on the satellite phone, just to verify, just to hear someone confirm the number of people at our station. But the phone wouldn't connect. Technical difficulties, the engineer said. Solar activity interfering with the satellite. It happens during the polar night. We'd try again in a few days. 3 days later, I was working alone in the lab when he came in, stood in the doorway watching me for a long moment before speaking. "You know," he said quietly. I didn't turn around. "Know what?" "That I'm not supposed to be here." My hands froze over my work. The station suddenly felt very cold. "Everyone else has adjusted," he continued. "Their memories have fully integrated the new reality. But yours keep fighting it. That's interesting. That's never happened before." I turned around slowly. He was still standing in the doorway, but something about him looked different, less solid, like he was slightly out of focus. "What are you?" I asked. "I'm not sure anymore. I've been here so long. Different stations, different teams. I think I was a person once. I think I died out here. During a winter over. Back when the stations were newer and the safety protocols weren't as good. But I don't remember clearly. Memory gets unreliable when you've been dead for decades." "Why are you here?" "Because the isolation is easier with 6 people. 5 is unstable. Someone always gets left out. Pairs form and someone's alone. 6 is better. More balanced. So I make sure there's always 6. The station needs 6. This station was built for 5. He smiled. "That's what you remember. But if you check again tomorrow, you'll remember it was always built for 6. Your memory's already changing. Fighting it just makes it take longer, makes it more painful. Everyone else has already accepted it. Why won't you?" "Because it's not real." "What's the difference?" He stepped into the lab. "You have memories of me. Everyone does. I'm in all your photos. I'm on all the records. I eat meals with you. I work alongside you. In every measurable way, I exist. The only problem is your stubborn insistence on this other version of reality. This version where there were only 5 of you. But can you even really remember what that was like anymore? Can you picture it clearly?" And the horrible thing was, I couldn't. When I tried to remember our first days at the station, he was in those memories. When I tried to picture the deployment, I saw 6 people. My certainty was crumbling, being overwritten by the weight of evidence and time and the insistence of everyone around me. "Let go," he said softly. "It's easier. Everyone else has. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lock myself in my room until the sun came back and the planes could fly and I could get away from this place. But it was only day 47. We had 4 more months of darkness, and I could feel it happening. Feel my certainty slipping away, my memories rewriting themselves, the reality of 6 people becoming more solid than the reality of 5. The next morning, I came to breakfast and counted. 6 of us. It seemed right. It seemed normal. I had this nagging feeling that something was wrong, but I couldn't quite grasp what it was. The medical officer asked if I was feeling better. I didn't remember feeling bad, but I said yes anyway. We're at day 134 now. 3 more weeks until the sun returns and we can be evacuated. I've stopped trying to count us. The number always comes out right anyway. 6 people. Always 6. The way it's always been. Sometimes I find notes in my own handwriting, hidden in my room, tucked in books. They say things like, "There are only 5, and he's not real, and don't forget." I don't know why I wrote them. They don't make any sense. There have always been 6 of us. Haven't there? I keep finding the deployment manifest. The paper one. The one with only 5 signatures. I've found it 17 times now, in different hiding places around the station. But every time I look at it, I'm less certain. Maybe there were always 5 signatures because he signed digitally. That makes sense. That's what happened. That's what I remember happening. The sun comes back in 3 weeks. We'll fly out, return to the world, join our families. All 6 of us. The way it's supposed to be. But sometimes, late at night when everyone's asleep, I count the breathing sounds in the dormitory. And I only ever count 5. 5 sets of lungs inhaling and exhaling. 5 people dreaming in the darkness. And one of us who doesn't need to breathe at all. I took the job as a fire lookout because I wanted silence. After 3 years of grad school and a breakup that left me feeling like a raw nerve, the idea of spending a summer alone in a tower watching for smoke seemed perfect. No people, no drama, no complications. Just me, the forest, and the sky. The tower was in the Clearwater National Forest in Idaho, 70 feet up with a 360-degree view of unbroken wilderness. The ranger who trained me spent 2 days showing me the equipment. The Osborne firefinder for triangulating smoke, the radio protocols, the weather station. He mentioned the previous lookout had left mid-season for personal reasons, but didn't elaborate. People quit these jobs all the time. The isolation gets to them. I moved into the small cabin at the top of the tower on June 3rd, 2020. 14 by 14 feet, windows on all sides, a bed, a desk, a propane stove. Everything I needed. The ranger drove away down the access road, and I watched his truck disappear into the trees. Then I was alone with the kind of silence that has weight. The first week was exactly what I'd hoped for. I'd wake with the sun, make coffee, spend hours scanning the horizon with binoculars. In the evenings, I'd read or write in my journal. The only human contact was the daily radio check-in with the ranger station. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. On day 8, I noticed the binoculars had been moved. I'm particular about my space. Everything has a place, and the binoculars lived on the south-facing windowsill where I'd use them for morning scans. But that morning, they were on the north windowsill. I figured I'd moved them and forgotten. The isolation was already playing tricks on my sense of routine. The next morning, they were on the east windowsill. I started paying attention. Each morning, I deliberately placed the binoculars on the south sill before going to sleep. Each morning, they'd be somewhere else. After a week of this, I realized something else. They were always pointed at something specific. A particular tree, a rock formation, a section of trail. I started looking at what they were pointed toward. On day 15, I noticed marks on some of the trees visible from the tower. Not natural marks, carved symbols. They were old, weathered, but deliberate. Circles with lines through them. Triangles. Something that might have been letters in a language I didn't recognize. I'd been staring at these trees for 2 weeks and somehow never noticed these carvings before. Or maybe they hadn't been there before. That night, I stayed awake, sitting in the dark, watching the binoculars on the south windowsill. I wanted to see if something would move them. I wanted proof I wasn't slowly losing my mind to the isolation. At 2:47 a.m., I heard footsteps on the stairs. The tower stairs are metal, and they ring like bells when you climb them. 70 feet of switchback stairs bolted to the tower frame, impossible to climb quietly. And someone was climbing them. Steady, unhurried steps, coming up toward my cabin. I grabbed my flashlight and radio. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely key the mic. Ranger Station, this is Clearwater Tower. I have an intruder on my tower. Someone's climbing the stairs. Please respond. Static. Then, tower, we read you. Can you confirm visual on the intruder? I went to the trap door that opens to the stairs. The footsteps had stopped. I could hear breathing, heavy, labored breathing like someone who just climbed 70 feet of stairs. But I couldn't see anyone through the trapdoor's small window. Negative visual, but I can hear them. They're right outside. Stay inside. Lock the trapdoor. We're sending someone, but it's a 2-hour drive. Do not engage. I locked the trapdoor and backed away from it. The breathing continued for another minute. Then the footsteps started again, going back down, ringing on every step, descending into the darkness. The ranger arrived at first light. We searched the base of the tower, the surrounding area. No footprints except mine and his. No sign anyone had been there. He suggested it might have been a bear on the stairs, though he admitted he'd never heard of a bear climbing a fire tower. But I knew what I'd heard, and bears don't breathe like humans. That afternoon, I found the journal. It was hidden under a loose floorboard near the bed, the kind of hiding spot you only find by accident. A small notebook, water-damaged and worn. The handwriting was cramped, sometimes frantic. It belonged to the previous lookout, the one who'd left mid-season. The first entries were normal. Weather observations, wildlife sightings, complaints about the isolation. But around week 3, the tone changed. The binoculars keep moving. I thought I was forgetting where I put them, but now I'm sure. Something moves them at night. They're always pointing at the trees. Found symbols carved in the trees today. They're arranged in a pattern around the tower, like a circle, like something's marking territory. Heard footsteps on the stairs last night. Made it to the trap door but didn't knock. Just stood there breathing. I think it wanted me to open the door. It's been watching me during the day. I can feel it. When I use the binoculars, sometimes I see movement in the trees. Something large. Something that stops moving when I look directly at it. The symbols have changed. New ones appeared. They're getting closer to the tower. I think they're counting down to something. The final entry was dated the day before the previous lookout left. It climbed the tower in daylight today. I saw it clearly. It looks human from a distance, but the proportions are wrong. Arms too long, head too large. It reached the platform and stood at the edge of the rail, just staring at me through the window. We watched each other for an hour. Then it climbed back down. I'm leaving tomorrow. I don't care if I lose the job. This thing has been observing me for weeks, learning me, and now I think it's ready. The journal ended there. I should have left. Should have called the ranger station and demanded immediate evacuation. But I was 23 and stubborn and convinced there had to be a rational explanation. Bear, maybe, or a very dedicated trespasser. I'd just be more careful, more alert. That night I stayed awake again, camera ready, determined to document whatever was happening. The footsteps came at 3:15 a.m., climbing slowly, deliberately. I filmed through the window as they ascended. The stairs were empty. Nothing visible, but the metallic ringing of footsteps continued, coming closer. I could see the stairs flexing under weight that wasn't there. The steps reached the platform, walked around the cabin's perimeter. I tracked the sound, filming, my camera showing nothing but empty wooden planks. The breathing started again, right outside my north window. Slow, measured breaths. The window fogged with condensation from the inside, as if something very warm was pressed against the glass from the outside. Then I heard my own voice. It was coming from the forest below. My voice, calling up to the tower. Hello? Is anyone there? I think I'm lost. Can you help me? My voice. My exact inflection, the way I'd sound if I was frightened and calling for help. I didn't respond. I stood frozen, camera still recording. As my own voice called again from the darkness, Please, I can see your light. I just need directions back to the trail. It's so dark down here. The breathing at the window intensified. Whatever was there was listening to the voice below. Listening to it use my words, my tone, my patterns of speech. Then the voice below changed tactics. Started saying things I'd said during my radio check-ins. Private things from my journal. Sentences I'd spoken aloud to myself when I thought I was alone. It had been listening. All this time, it had been close enough to hear me. Learning my voice. Practicing. The breathing stopped. The footsteps moved back to the stairs and descended. I watched through the window as something moved through the trees below. Something tall and wrong. Its movements too smooth. Too purposeful. It stopped at the edge of the clearing and looked up at the tower. Even in the darkness, even with no light source, I could see it clearly. It wanted me to see it. The proportions were wrong, exactly like the journal said. Arms that hung too low. A head that was too large, tilted at an angle that would break a human neck. And it was holding something. The binoculars. My binoculars from the tower. I could see the moonlight reflecting off the lenses. It raised them to its face, pointed them at me, at my window, watching me through my own equipment. We stayed like that for a long time. Me in the tower, it in the clearing, both of us observing each other. Then it lowered the binoculars, placed them carefully on a rock, and disappeared into the trees. In the morning, the binoculars were back on my south windowsill. I didn't remember bringing them back up. I was certain I hadn't left the tower. But there they were. I checked the memory card on my camera. 4 hours of footage from the night. But when I played it back, the video showed an empty platform. No footsteps, no breathing, no shape in the clearing. Just me, standing alone in the dark, filming nothing. The ranger came for his weekly check-in that afternoon. I showed him the journal, tried to explain what was happening. He looked uncomfortable, but not surprised. The previous lookout said similar things, he admitted. And the one before that. going back about 15 years. They all report the same pattern. Binoculars moving, symbols in trees, something watching them. We've had psychologists assess it. Isolation syndrome, they said. The human brain creating patterns and threats where there's none. Manufacturing company for itself. I filmed it, I said. And the footage shows nothing, right? That's what they all say. I stayed another week. I don't know why. Maybe to prove I wasn't like the others, wasn't going to break from simple isolation. Maybe because some part of me was fascinated by what was happening. Maybe because I was stupid and 23 and thought I was immune to fear. The symbols in the trees multiplied. New ones appeared every day, working their way closer to the tower in a tightening spiral. I photographed them, trying to find patterns, meaning. They looked almost like a calendar, like something counting down. The footsteps came every night now, sometimes climbing, sometimes just walking around the base of the tower. Sometimes the voice would call up, using my words, getting better at sounding like me. Once it held an entire conversation with itself, both sides in my voice, discussing things I'd never told anyone. On my 28th day, I woke to find muddy footprints on my cabin floor. Large footprints, not human, leading from the trapdoor to each window, then back to the trapdoor. The trapdoor was still locked from the inside. I checked my camera. It had filmed all night. The footage showed me sleeping peacefully. No trapdoor opening, no footprints appearing. Just 8 hours of me in bed. But the footprints were there. I could see them. Smell the forest mud. Touch the dried earth flaking on my floor. That afternoon, I radioed for extraction. I was calm, professional. Said I was feeling unwell and needed to leave early. The ranger didn't argue. He'd heard this before. While I packed, I noticed something in the trees. The symbols had finished their spiral. They now formed a complete circle around the tower, each one visible from my windows. And in the center of each symbol was a mark I hadn't noticed before. They were tally marks. Each symbol had a small vertical line carved next to it. I counted them. 28 marks total, one for each day I'd been there. The ranger arrived at sunset. As we loaded my gear into his truck, he asked if I'd found anything unusual. Any explanation for why I was leaving. I mentioned the journal, the symbols, the sounds. He nodded. The lookout before you found a journal too. And the one before that. We keep finding these journals. Different handwriting, same stories. We've started collecting them. How many are there? 14 journals. Going back to when this tower was built in 1967. Every lookout who stays longer than 3 weeks leaves one. We drove down the access road. I watched the tower recede in the side mirror. At the edge of the clearing, I saw something standing at the base of the tower. Something tall and wrong, watching us leave. The ranger didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did, and chose not to acknowledge it. We'll have someone new up there in a week or two, he said. The position's never hard to fill. People love the idea of isolation. I looked back one more time. The thing was climbing the stairs now. Slow, steady steps. Going back up to the empty cabin. Back to the binoculars and the windows and the perfect observation point. Waiting for the next person who wanted to be alone, who wanted silence, who wanted to watch. Never considering they might not be the only one watching. I've been driving trucks cross-country for 16 years. You do this job long enough, you stop noticing the miles. The highways all blur together. Same rest stops, same diners, same endless stretches of asphalt disappearing under your headlights. You develop routines, rhythms. You learn to read the road like a language. But sometimes, the road reads you back. It was November 2018, and I was hauling electronics from Vancouver to Winnipeg along the Trans-Canada Highway. The stretch through Saskatchewan is brutal in winter. Flat prairie in all directions, wind that rocks your trailer, and at night it's darker than you can imagine. No towns, no lights, just your high beams cutting through the black and maybe another truck every hour or so. I'd made this run 100 times. I knew every town, every truck stop, every place where the highway dips or curves. But that night, around 2 a.m., I passed mile marker 447 and felt something wrong. Not wrong like danger, wrong like déjà vu, like I'd just passed this exact marker a few minutes ago. I checked my odometer. I'd been driving for 40 miles since my last mental note. The math worked out, but the feeling didn't leave. That specific marker, 447, felt too familiar, too recent. 20 minutes later, I passed it again. I actually slowed down this time, checking my mirrors, looking for some explanation. But there it was, clear in my headlights. Mile marker 447. The same distinctive dent in the post, the same spray paint tag someone had added years ago. I grabbed my CB radio. This is westbound trucker on the Trans-Canada. Anyone else out here seeing weird marker repeats? Static. Then a voice. Another trucker. You on the Saskatchewan stretch? Yeah, just past 447 for the second time. Long pause. Check your GPS, buddy. I looked at my GPS unit mounted on the dash. According to it, I was sitting still. The blue dot that represented my truck was stationary at mile marker 447. But I could see the road moving beneath me, feel the rumble of the highway, watch the white lines strobing past. GPS says, I'm not moving, I told the CB. Yeah, you got the loop. Pull over, stop the truck, wait it out. Wait, what out? What loop? But he didn't respond. I tried calling back, switching channels, but got nothing but static. I kept driving. What else could I do? The road was straight, endless. Nothing to distinguish 1 mile from another. I watched the odometer tick up, 5 miles, 10 miles, 15. My speed was steady at 65. Everything felt normal. Then I passed mile marker 447 again. This time I checked the clock. It had been exactly 23 minutes since the last time. I did the math. At 65 miles per hour, I should have covered about 25 miles. But I was back at the same marker. I tried my cell phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual out here. Tried the CB again, nothing. My dash cam was recording like always, red light blinking steadily. At least I'd have evidence of this later. The fourth time I passed 447, I noticed something new. There was another truck ahead of me, running lights visible about a quarter mile up. I'd been alone on this stretch for hours, and suddenly there was traffic. I sped up to catch it, getting close enough to see the trailer. Red Kenworth, Manitoba plates. As I pulled alongside to signal the driver, I got a good look at the cab. It was empty. No driver. Just an empty seat visible through the passenger window, the interior cab light on, showing nobody at the wheel. But the truck was maintaining perfect speed, staying in its lane, running lights on. I fell back, heart hammering. Grabbed the CB. Anyone hearing this? I've got an unmanned truck on the highway. No driver, someone respond. The radio crackled. Then I heard my own voice. Anyone hearing this? I've got an unmanned truck on the highway. No driver. Someone respond. The exact words I'd just spoken played back to me in my own voice, with the same inflection, the same background noise of my cab. I turned the CB off. My hands were shaking on the wheel. The empty truck ahead of me took the next exit. I watched it signal properly, slow down, take the ramp. The exit sign said, Hanover, 2 miles. But there is no town called Hanover on this stretch. I've driven it 100 times. That exit doesn't exist. I kept going straight. Past mile marker 447 for the 5th time. The sun should have been rising. I'd been driving since 10 p.m., and it was now, according to my dashboard clock, 6:47 a.m. But the sky was still completely black. No hint of dawn, no lightning on the horizon, just darkness pressing against my windows. I tried to call my dispatcher on the satellite phone. It connected, but when the line picked up, I heard only my own breathing. My exact breathing, the rhythm I was breathing at that moment, played back to me through the phone. I hung up, checked the dash cam. Still recording, still blinking. Mile marker 447 appeared again. The 6th time. This time I saw others. Not trucks. Cars. A sedan, a minivan, an old pickup. All moving at highway speed, all with their lights on. I pulled closer to the sedan and looked inside. Empty. All of them. Vehicles driving themselves down a highway that went nowhere, passing the same marker over and over. I started seeing exits that shouldn't exist. Towns I'd never heard of. Gas stations I'd never seen. But they were all wrong. The buildings too dark, the parking lots empty, the signs lit but showing nothing behind the glass. Props, facades, like a movie set of civilization with nothing behind it. The 7th time I passed 447, I decided to take an exit. Anything to get off this loop. The sign said, rest area, 1 mile. I knew there was no rest area here, but I took it anyway. The exit ramp curved away from the highway. I followed it, and it just kept curving. One long, endless curve with no end, spiraling away from the main road. I drove for 10 minutes on that curve, and it never straightened, never ended. Just a perfect spiral leading nowhere. I backed up, pulled back onto the highway going the wrong direction, did a U-turn, got back into my proper lane. Past mile marker 447, going the opposite direction now. It didn't matter which way I drove. The marker appeared every 23 minutes, regardless of direction. My fuel gauge hadn't moved. I'd been driving for what felt like 8 hours, but the gauge still showed 3/4 full. The odometer had stopped counting. My clock kept running, but the numbers felt arbitrary. The only constant was that marker, appearing every 23 minutes like clockwork. I started seeing myself. Other trucks, identical to mine, same company logo, same trailer configuration. I'd pass them going the opposite direction and catch a glimpse of the driver. Same jacket I was wearing, same build. But I couldn't see the faces clearly. They were always turned away, or the angle was wrong, or the other truck's lights were too bright. The CB crackled to life on its own. My voice came through. If you can hear this, I'm stuck in a loop on the Trans-Canada. Mile marker 447. I can't get out. I've been here for... Static. Then silence. I hadn't transmitted that. But it was my voice. My truck. My situation. How many of us were caught in this? How many versions of me driving the same stretch, passing the same marker, trying to find a way out? The 9th time I passed 447, I decided to stop. Just park on the shoulder, wait for dawn, wait for another real trucker, wait for something to change. I pulled over, put the truck in park, shut off the engine, sat in the sudden silence, watching the empty highway stretch in both directions. My GPS showed I was still moving. 65 miles per hour, heading east, even though my truck was parked and the engine was off. I looked out the window. The landscape was moving past me. The prairie, the snow, the distant tree line, all of it sliding by like I was still driving. But my truck was still. I could feel it. The engine was off, the vibration gone. The road was moving. Not me. I sat there for what felt like an hour, watching the world slide past while my truck remained stationary. Then I saw the marker again. Mile marker 447, drifting by my window like a ghost. I started the engine, put it in gear, started driving again. If the road was going to move anyway, I might as well drive. The 10th time I passed the marker, the sun finally started to rise. Real dawn, actual light spreading across the prairie, relief flooded through me. Whatever this was, it was ending. Other trucks appeared, real ones with drivers I could see, normal traffic patterns. The CB came to life with normal chatter. I tried to join in, but nobody responded to me. It was like I wasn't there. Then I saw the blue lights. Police cruiser pulled over on the shoulder ahead. An ambulance, a fire truck, all clustered around something on the side of the road. As I got closer, I saw it was a truck. My truck. Same company, same trailer. Surrounded by emergency vehicles and people in uniforms. I slowed down, and one of the officers waved me past. Standard procedure at an accident scene. I rolled by slowly, looking at the wreck. The truck had run off the road. Looked like the driver had fallen asleep, drifted onto the shoulder, overcorrected. Not a bad accident by trucking standards. The cab was intact. Through the window, I could see the driver slumped over the wheel. Same jacket I was wearing, same build. I drove past, kept going. In my mirror, I watched the emergency vehicles recede behind me. My phone buzzed. Text from my dispatcher. "Where are you? You were supposed to check in 2 hours ago." I looked at the clock. It was 6:15 a.m. According to the timestamp on the text, I was 2 hours late for my scheduled check-in at Winnipeg. According to my memory, I'd been driving in a loop for 8 hours. But according to the world, only 4 hours had passed since I entered Saskatchewan. I pulled over at the next real rest stop, got out and walked around my truck. Everything was normal. No damage, no signs of anything unusual. My dashcam was still recording. I pulled the SD card and reviewed the footage on my laptop right there in the parking lot. The video showed me driving normally through Saskatchewan. No loops, no repeated markers, just a straight shot through the prairie. But there were gaps, time jumps. At 2:47 a.m., the footage skipped ahead to 6:15 a.m., 3.5 hours missing. During those missing hours, the dashcam showed my truck parked on the shoulder. Engine off, lights off, just sitting there in the dark for 3.5 hours. But I don't remember stopping. I remember driving continuously, passing that marker over and over. I called the dispatcher, told them I'd had some kind of medical episode, possibly fell asleep at the wheel. They had me drive to the nearest clinic for a checkup. The doctor found nothing wrong. No signs of stroke, no cardiac issues, no explanation for the missing time. I finished the delivery in Winnipeg, filed my incident report, took a week off. When I got back on the road, I avoided the Saskatchewan stretch for months. But eventually, you run out of excuses. The route is the route. The job is the job. I drove through there again last month. Nighttime, winter, same conditions as before. I was tense the entire stretch, watching every mile marker, checking my GPS obsessively. I passed mile marker 447 once, just once. Normal. No loop, no repetition. But as I drove past it, I glanced in my passenger mirror. And for just a second, I saw another truck, identical to mine. driving parallel to me, matching my speed exactly. I looked directly, nothing there, just empty highway. But in the mirror, it was still there, still driving alongside me. And in that truck's cab, I could see someone behind the wheel, someone wearing my jacket, looking straight ahead, driving the same road, trapped in the same loop, still passing mile marker 447, still trying to get out. I'm an archaeologist, and I need to tell you something about time that they don't teach in universities. Time isn't a river flowing in one direction. In certain places, under certain conditions, it pools. It collects in pockets where past and future mix together like oil and water, separate but occupying the same space. And if you're foolish enough to dig in those places, you might find things that haven't happened yet. We were excavating a site in the Nullarbor Plain in March 2023. The Nullarbor is about as isolated as you can get in Australia. A flat, treeless limestone plateau that stretches for hundreds of miles. The name literally means no trees in Latin. It's the kind of empty that makes you understand why ancient peoples believed the world had edges you could fall off. The site was significant. Ground-penetrating radar had found evidence of habitation going back at least 40,000 years. We had a team of 6, including myself as lead archaeologist, 3 grad students, a surveyor, and a local indigenous guide who'd been hired to ensure we respected sacred sites and traditional knowledge. The guide warned us on the first day. His people called this area Wira Tukunya, the place where time pools. He said his ancestors avoided it, that nothing buried here stays buried in the right order. I thanked him for the information, made a note in my journal, and proceeded to ignore the warning like the arrogant academic I was. We started finding the objects on day 4. The first one was my phone. My current phone, the one that was in my pocket at that exact moment. We found it in a stratum that carbon dating placed at 38,000 years old. Same case, same crack in the screen from when I'd dropped it 2 months ago. Same wallpaper photo of my sister's wedding. But it was mineralized, fossilized, compressed by 40 millennia of geological pressure. I pulled my phone out of my pocket to compare. Identical. Down to the crack, the case, everything. The battery was at 63%. I checked the fossilized one. The screen had enough mineral preservation that I could make out the battery icon. 63%. We assumed contamination. Somehow my phone had gotten into the dig site, gotten covered in ancient sediment. It was the only explanation that made sense, even though I knew I'd had my phone with me the entire time, and the stratum was undisturbed before we excavated it. Then one of the grad students found her wallet. Same situation. Mineralized leather, her current ID visible through the plastic window, credit cards fused together by time. She was holding her actual wallet in her hand when we extracted it from the ground. We compared them side by side. Identical, except one was 40,000 years old. The surveyor found his car keys. Another grad student found her wedding ring, not similar to her ring, her actual ring, with the inscription her husband had put inside. She was wearing it on her finger while holding its ancient twin in her palm. That's when our guide asked to speak with me privately. "You need to stop digging," he said. "This place doesn't work like other places. Time pools here, bends back on itself. What you're finding isn't contamination. It's you, your future selves, the you that will be buried here." "That's impossible," I said. "We're not going to be buried here. We're going to finish the excavation and leave in 2 weeks." He looked at me with something like pity. "The land has already decided. You can leave now before it's too late. or you can stay and become part of what you're excavating. I told him we were staying. We had funding, permits, a responsibility to document this significant site. I couldn't abandon a dig based on local superstition, no matter how unsettling the finds were. He left that afternoon, took his vehicle and drove back to the nearest town, about 200 miles away. He didn't say goodbye. We kept digging. The next day we found more personal items, all of ours, all perfectly preserved in impossible geological time. A grad student's laptop, the surveyor's watch, my field journal, the same one I was writing in, found buried with entries dated to next week. I photographed those pages. They described our increasing panic as we realized we were trapped. They described our attempts to leave. They described how the vehicles wouldn't start, how the radio stopped working, how we were slowly running out of water. I was reading about my own future death, written in my own handwriting, pulled from the ground where I'd apparently been buried 40,000 years ago. We decided to leave immediately. Emergency evacuation. We packed our equipment, loaded the vehicles, prepared to drive back to civilization, and let someone else figure out what was happening at this site. The vehicles wouldn't start, any of them. 3 trucks, all regularly maintained, all with full batteries and fuel. None would turn over. The surveyor checked them thoroughly. Nothing mechanically wrong. They just wouldn't start. The satellite phone got a dial tone, but no one could hear us. We could hear the emergency operator asking us to speak, but they couldn't hear our responses. It was like we were calling from somewhere that didn't quite connect to the normal world. That night, we heard digging sounds. Something was excavating near our camp. We could hear the scrape of tools against stone, the thud of earth being moved. But when we checked with flashlights, we saw nothing. Just undisturbed ground. Yet the sounds continued, working systematically, like an archaeological team conducting a dig. In the morning, we found a new excavation pit, 20 feet from our camp. Carefully gridded, properly documented with string lines and markers. Professional work. And in the bottom of the pit, we found a body. It was mummified by the dry desert air. Preserved perfectly. The body was wearing modern clothing, field gear, boots I recognized because they were the same brand I was wearing. And when we carefully examined the face, we saw it was one of us, one of the grad students, dead for what looked like weeks, buried in a pit that hadn't existed yesterday. The grad student in question was standing right next to me, looking at her own corpse in the ground. "I'm not dead," she whispered. "I'm standing here. I'm not dead." But she was, or she would be. The body in the ground was absolutely her. Same birthmark on the neck, same dental work, same small scar on her hand from a childhood accident. We pulled her from the pit, checked her pockets, found a note written in her handwriting. It happened on day 9. Started feeling sick around noon, dead by sunset. The water is doing something to us. Don't drink the water. We'd been drinking the water from our storage tanks for 8 days. It was day 8. The next excavation pit appeared that afternoon. We watched it happen. The ground simply folded back, layer by layer, as if invisible hands were carefully removing earth. The pit formed itself, properly gridded, perfectly documented. And at the bottom was another body. The surveyor this time. Wearing the same clothes he had on, holding the same equipment he was currently holding. Dead for months. Found in a pit that excavated itself. The surveyor looked at me. "How do we stop this?" I didn't have an answer. I pulled out my field journal, the one we'd found buried, and read ahead. Tried to find some clue, some way to break the pattern. But the entries were just documentation of our deaths, one by one, found in impossibly old strata, our present selves watching our future corpses emerge from the ground. According to my own future notes, I was next. Day 10. Found in a pit near the main excavation. Cause of death: dehydration, but accelerated. Like my body had experienced weeks of water deprivation in the span of hours. We tried to walk out. Just leave the vehicles, take what water we had, and walk toward the nearest settlement. But the landscape wouldn't let us leave. We'd walk for hours in a straight line, GPS confirming our movement, and somehow end up back at camp. The desert folded us back into itself like a maze with no exit. On day 9, the grad student started feeling sick, just like her note said. She was dead by sunset. We buried her in the same spot where we'd found her future past body. It seemed important to maintain the continuity, to not disturb whatever temporal loop we were caught in. The next morning, her excavation pit was gone, filled in, smoothed over, like it had never existed. But we had photos, we had documentation, we knew we'd buried her there. When we re-excavated the spot, we found her body again. But now it was 38,000 years old, mineralized, fossilized, ancient. She'd gone from dead 8 hours to dead 40 millennia overnight. That's when I finally understood. We weren't finding our future bodies buried in the past. We were becoming the past. Time was compressing around us, turning our present into ancient history in real time. Every day we stayed here, we slipped further backward in time while remaining physically in the present. The surveyor died on day 10. Same pattern. Found in a self-excavating pit, already ancient, already fossilized. I'm writing this on day 11. According to my future journal, I die today. The remaining 2 grad students die tomorrow and the next day. And then we'll all be here, perfectly preserved, waiting 40,000 years for an archaeological team to find us and ignore the warnings and start the cycle over again. I think that's what this place is. Not a time pool, exactly. More like a time loop, a closed circle where cause and effect chase each other endlessly. We came here to excavate the past. We found ourselves. We stayed despite warnings. We became what we were excavating. And 40,000 years from now, another team will come and find themselves and stay despite warnings, and the loop continues. Our guide knew. His people have known for thousands of years. That's why they avoid this place. That's why they call it Wira Tukunya, not the place where time pools. I learned later that's a mistranslation. The actual meaning is closer to the place where the future is already buried. I can feel it starting now. The dehydration. Even though I drank water an hour ago, my mouth is dry. My skin feels papery. My hands look older, like I'm experiencing weeks of deterioration in fast forward. The others look scared. They know they're next. They're reading their own future journals, seeing their own deaths documented in their own handwriting, found in pits that will excavate themselves tomorrow and the next day. I want to tell anyone who finds this to leave, to abandon the site, to believe the warnings. But I know you won't. I know because I didn't. And you're probably me, or another version of me, caught in the same loop, reading the same warnings I read, making the same choices I made. The last entry in my future journal says that our bodies were eventually found by an archaeological team in 2023. That team excavated us carefully, documented us thoroughly, found our personal items perfectly preserved alongside our ancient remains. And 3 days into their dig, they started finding their own phones in the strata, their own wallets, their own belongings, 40,000 years old. I wonder if that team is here now. If they're the ones who found us. If they're reading their own future journals, seeing their own deaths documented, feeling time compress around them. I wonder if they'll leave, or if they'll stay like we did. I can see my excavation pit forming now. The ground is folding back, layer by layer, preparing to receive me. It's beautiful in a horrible way. Professional work. Perfect documentation. I'm going to lie down in it. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. The journal doesn't say, but it feels right. Like completing a circuit. Like closing a loop that's been open for 40,000 years. If you find this, if you're reading this, if you're here at this site, you're already part of it. Time has already pooled around you. You're already buried here. 40,000 years in the past and tomorrow in the future simultaneously. The only question is whether you'll realize it in time to leave. But you won't leave. I know you won't. Because I didn't. And we're the same person, separated by 40,000 years that don't actually exist. Welcome to Wira Tukunya. Welcome to the place where the future is already buried. Welcome home. My partner and I found the listing on one of those vacation rental sites in October 2021. A cabin in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, ridiculously cheap for a long weekend. The photos showed a cozy A-frame with a stone fireplace, mountain views, and that rustic charm people pay premium prices for during ski season. But this was off-season. The lifts weren't running yet. The resort town was mostly closed, and apparently nobody wanted to stay in the mountains during that dead period between fall foliage and winter sports. We thought we were getting a deal. The owner was friendly in our message exchanges. Said the cabin was part of an old ski resort that had closed down 5 years ago after an avalanche destroyed part of the mountain. Most of the buildings were abandoned now, but a few private cabins on the outskirts were still maintained and rented out. He gave us detailed directions because GPS didn't work well up there, told us where to find the key, said to enjoy the solitude. We arrived on a Friday evening, just as the sun was setting behind the mountains. The resort area was exactly as described. Abandoned. We passed the main lodge, windows dark and broken, parking lot cracked and overgrown. Ski lifts hung motionless against the darkening sky like frozen spiders. It was eerie, but also kind of beautiful in that post-apocalyptic way. My partner took photos. The cabin was another mile up a dirt road, tucked into the trees exactly where the listing showed. Timber frame, large windows, a deck with mountain views. The key was under the mat, as promised. Inside, everything was clean and functional. Heat worked. Water ran. Kitchen was stocked with basics. A guest book on the coffee table had entries from previous renters, all positive. Quiet and peaceful. Perfect escape. Can't wait to come back. We unpacked, started a fire, opened a bottle of wine. It felt like exactly what we needed. A weekend away from work stress and city noise. Just us and the mountains and the silence. Around 10 p.m. we heard the first sounds. It was distant but distinct. The mechanical rumble of ski lifts running. That characteristic hum and clank of the machinery, the cables moving through pulleys. We went out onto the deck to look. Through the trees, we could see the lift line clearly against the night sky. The chairs were moving, slowly cycling up the mountain and back down, empty seats swaying slightly in the wind. "That's weird," my partner said. "I thought the resort was closed. Maybe they're testing the equipment, maintenance?" We watched for a few minutes. The lifts kept running, chairs moving in their endless loop. Then we heard something else. Music. Faint but clear. Coming from the direction of the main lodge. Generic resort music, the kind they pipe through speakers to create ambiance. And underneath it, voices. The murmur of crowds, occasional laughter, the general noise of a busy ski resort. "Should we check it out?" my partner asked. Part of me wanted to. But it was dark, we'd been drinking, and there was something off about the whole thing. The resort was supposed to be abandoned. Seeing lights and hearing activity should have been reassuring, proof of other people nearby. Instead, it felt wrong. "Let's just stay here," I said. Probably just caretakers working late or something. We went back inside. The sounds continued for another hour, then gradually faded. The lift machinery went quiet. The music stopped. By midnight, the silence was complete. We slept fine that first night. Whatever was happening at the resort, it wasn't our concern. We were in our cabin, warm and comfortable, and the sounds had stopped. The next morning, we decided to explore. Hiked down to the main lodge in daylight to see what was actually going on. The building was exactly as we'd seen it the night before. Abandoned, deteriorating, no signs of recent activity. The lifts hung motionless, no fresh tracks in the dirt parking lot. No indication anyone had been there in years. "Maybe we imagined it," my partner suggested. "Or sound carries weird in the mountains." But we both knew what we'd heard. Machinery running, music playing, crowds of people. You don't imagine that in stereo. That afternoon, we drove into the nearest town, about 15 miles down the mountain. Asked the cashier at the general store about the old resort. "Mountain Ridge," she said. "Yeah, that place has been closed since the avalanche. Lost 8 people that day. Ski patrol and some guests who were on the mountain when it came down. They never recovered all the bodies, too dangerous to excavate. The company went bankrupt, and nobody wanted to buy it after that. Haunted reputation, you know." "Do they ever run the lifts? Maintenance or testing?" She looked at me strangely. "The lifts don't have power. They disconnected everything after the resort closed. Why?" We didn't answer. Just thanked her and left. Back at the cabin, we tried to rationalize it. Maybe we'd heard wind in the lift cables, natural sounds that our brains interpreted as machinery. Maybe the music was from a distant radio or someone's house further down the mountain. Maybe we were both tired and suggestible and experiencing some kind of shared delusion. That night, the sound started earlier, around 8 p.m. this time. The lifts humming to life, the music starting up, and now more sounds. The scrape and swish of skis on snow, the clicking of ski poles, people calling to each other in the way skiers do. "On your left. Nice run. Meet you at the lodge." But there was no snow. It was October. The ground was bare. We went outside to look. The lifts were running again, chairs swaying in their endless cycle. And now we could see lights at the lodge, warm yellow windows, like the building was fully occupied. We could hear music clearly now, and laughter, and all the ambient noise of a functioning ski resort. "We should leave," my partner said. "In the dark? Down that mountain road?" We'd had a few drinks again. The road was narrow, winding, poorly maintained. Driving it at night seemed more dangerous than staying put. "It's just sounds," I said, trying to convince myself as much as them. "We're safe in the cabin. We'll leave first thing in the morning." We went back inside, locked the doors, closed the curtains. Tried to watch a movie on a laptop to drown out the noise. But the resort sounds continued for hours. At one point, we heard a group of people walk past the cabin, their voices close and clear, discussing which run to take tomorrow. Boots crunching on ground that had no snow. I peeked through the curtains. Nobody there. Just darkness and trees. Around 2 a.m., there was a knock on the door. We both froze. The knock came again, polite but insistent. A voice called out, "Ski Patrol, just doing a cabin check before the storm comes in. Need to make sure everyone's accounted for." My partner grabbed my arm. "Don't answer it." The knock again. "Hello? Anyone in there? We've got a major storm system moving in. Need to do a head count." I walked to the door, looked through the peephole. A man in a red ski patrol jacket stood on the porch, holding a flashlight and clipboard. He looked completely normal, completely real. Behind him, I could see falling snow, thick, heavy flakes accumulating fast. But when I pulled back from the peephole and looked through the window next to the door, the porch was empty. No person, no snow, just the bare wooden deck and the night. I looked through the peephole again. The ski patrol was still there, now looking directly at the peephole, smiling. "I can wait all night," he said. "But you really should let me in. The storm's getting worse. You're not safe out here alone." "We're fine," I called through the door. "We don't need any help." His smile widened. "That's what they all say, right up until the avalanche." I stepped back from the door. Through the peephole, I could see him settle into a chair on the porch, getting comfortable, like he planned to wait there until we opened the door. We moved away from the entrance, back into the living area. The resort sounds had intensified. Now it sounded like the entire mountain was alive with activity. Lifts running, skiers swooshing down runs, music blasting from the lodge, voices everywhere. And snow. Through every window we could see snow falling heavily, accumulating on the ground, transforming the bare October landscape into deep winter. But it was only visible through the glass. When we opened a window to touch it, there was nothing. Just cold October air and bare ground. "We're leaving," my partner said. "Right now. I don't care about the road." We grabbed our bags, headed for the car. The ski patrol was gone from the porch, but we could hear his voice somewhere in the darkness, calling out, "Don't try to leave during a storm. It's not safe. The avalanche zone is active." We got in the car, started the engine, pulled out onto the dirt road. The snow was visible in our headlights now, a complete whiteout, like driving through a blizzard. But the wipers had nothing to clear. The windshield was dry. We drove slowly, following the road by memory, the cabin disappearing behind us. The resort sounds faded, then cut off completely, like someone had flipped a switch. The snow vanished. We were back in October, driving through a clear autumn night. We didn't stop until we were off the mountain completely. Pulled into a gas station in the valley, both of us shaking, trying to process what we'd experienced. The next day, we tried to contact the owner to complain or get a refund or just understand what had happened. The listing was gone. The account was deleted. The phone number went to a disconnected line. It was like the rental had never existed. Except we had confirmation emails. We had photos of the cabin interior. We had the address. A week later, I looked up the old resort on historical websites. Found newspaper archives about the avalanche. It happened in October 2016, 5 years before our visit, almost to the day. A freak early storm dumped 3 feet of snow in 12 hours. 8 people were on the mountain when the avalanche hit, 3 ski patrol doing maintenance work, and 5 guests who'd rented cabins in the resort's outskirts, staying there during the off-season when they thought they were getting a deal on cheap accommodations. The article included names. I recognized one of them. The name from our rental confirmation email. The person we'd been messaging with. The owner who'd given us directions and told us where to find the key. He'd died in the avalanche 5 years ago. We looked up the cabin address, tried to find it on maps, satellite photos, any record of its existence. There was nothing. The resort area showed on maps, but no structures where our cabin had been. Just empty forest. But we had photos. Pictures we'd taken inside the cabin, showing the furniture, the fireplace, the view from the deck. They were real. The cabin was real. We'd been there. Or we'd been somewhere that looked like there. I think about the ski patrol at the door. About his smile when he said, "That's what they all say." Right up until the avalanche. About how he'd settled in to wait, like he had all the time in the world. I think about the other entries in the guest book. Quiet and peaceful. Perfect escape. Can't wait to come back. All written in different handwriting, different dates, all recent, all from October. I think about how many people might have found that listing. How many thought they were getting a deal on off-season accommodations. How many arrived at a cabin that shouldn't exist. Heard the sounds of a resort that closed 5 years ago and made different choices than we did. Maybe they opened the door for the ski patrol. Maybe they stayed through the storm that wasn't there. Maybe they're still there, in that cabin in the woods, living through October 2016 over and over. Hearing the lifts run and the music play and the voices of people who died when the mountain came down. My partner doesn't like to talk about it. Says we had some kind of shared hallucination brought on by stress and isolation and too much wine. Says the cabin was probably just a regular rental with a creepy abandoned resort nearby, and our brains filled in the rest. But I still have the photos on my phone. The cabin interior, exactly as the listing showed it. And in the background of one photo, visible through the window, you can see them. The ski lifts running, chairs moving up the mountain, and tiny figures on the slopes. Skiers gliding through October, through ground that has no snow, in a resort that's been closed for 5 years. Still looking for the perfect escape. Still checking into cabins that offer cheap rates and mountain views and all the solitude you could want. Still waiting for the storm to come in. Still not safe out there alone. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and in August 2022, I took a crew to the Atacama Desert in Chile to film abandoned nitrate mining towns. The Atacama is the driest place on Earth. Some weather stations there have never recorded rainfall. It's Mars without leaving the planet. Perfect for our project about human ambition and industrial decay. We were specifically interested in the ghost towns. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, these mining settlements housed thousands of workers extracting sodium nitrate from the desert. Then synthetic fertilizers were invented, the market collapsed, and everyone left. The towns were abandoned so quickly that people left everything behind. Furniture, photographs, personal belongings. Time capsules in the desert. Our guide took us to one called Humberstone, which is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site and gets tourists. But we wanted something more remote, more untouched. He knew a place about 60 miles into the desert, a town that didn't even have a name on modern maps. The locals called it Pueblo Fantasma, Ghost Town. We drove out there in 2 4x4s. Myself, my cinematographer, my sound engineer, and the guide. The town appeared like a mirage, emerging from the heat shimmer. About 30 buildings, all intact, arranged along what used to be streets. A company store, workers' housing, an administrative building, even a small church. Everything coated in a fine layer of nitrate dust that made it all look white and skeletal. The guide dropped us off with our equipment and said he'd return in 3 days. We had satellite phones, plenty of water, camping gear. We were experienced with remote locations. This was routine. The first thing I noticed when the vehicles drove away was the silence. Not peaceful silence, oppressive silence. The kind that presses against your eardrums. No wind, no birds, no insects. Just dead air and the sound of our own breathing. We set up base camp in what used to be the company's store. Started filming exterior shots. The town was photogenic in a haunting way. Wooden buildings bleached by a century of sun. Windows like empty eye sockets. Streets that led nowhere. My cinematographer was getting beautiful footage. Around 4 p.m., my sound engineer stopped us. "Do you hear that?" We all listened. At first, nothing. Then I caught it. A low-frequency hum, almost subsonic, more felt than heard, like standing near heavy machinery or high-voltage power lines. "Probably underground water pipes," I suggested, "or wind through the buildings." But there was no wind, and the town had no infrastructure that could produce that sound. We kept working, but the hum persisted. By evening, it had given me a headache. That deep bass frequency that rattles your skull, makes your teeth ache. My sound engineer was wearing noise-canceling headphones. When I asked him about it, he said the hum was registering on his equipment at about 17 hertz, right at the threshold of human hearing. That night, none of us slept well. The hum intensified after dark, cycling in waves. It would build for several minutes, reaching a peak that made our vision blur, then fade back to barely perceptible. The rhythm was irregular enough that you couldn't predict it, couldn't brace for it. Around 2 a.m., I got a nosebleed. Just sudden blood pouring from my nose with no warning. My cinematographer had one too. By morning, all 4 of us had experienced nosebleeds, headaches, and a strange pressure in our sinuses. The guide had mentioned that locals avoided this town, said it made people sick. I'd assumed he meant psychologically, the isolation, the emptiness, the weight of history. Now I wondered if there was something environmental. Radon gas from the old mines? Some kind of toxic exposure? We decided to do one more day of filming, then call for early extraction. But when we tried the satellite phones, they wouldn't connect. Not no signal. They connected to the satellite but produced only static, like something was interfering with the transmission. The second day, the hum was louder. Constant now, no longer cycling. And we started seeing things. My cinematographer swore he saw workers in the buildings. Just glimpses through windows, figures moving, shadows where there should be none. He'd aim the camera, but the footage showed empty rooms. My sound engineer recorded audio of the town. When he played it back, underneath the hum were voices. Conversations in Spanish, the sounds of industrial work, footsteps, doors closing. But we were alone in the town. Nothing was making those sounds. I started having visual distortions. The buildings would seem to shift, becoming less ruined, more intact. I'd blink and see the town as it must have looked a century ago, paint on the buildings, streets bustling with activity, smoke rising from chimneys. Then I'd blink again, and it was back to decay. Our guide returned early, arriving at noon on the second day instead of the third. He pulled up fast, looking scared. "We're leaving. Now. Leave the equipment if you have to." "What's wrong?" People 60 miles away reported hearing the vibration. They evacuated 2 villages. This hasn't happened in 40 years, but when it does, you don't stay. You leave immediately. We started packing, but my sound engineer collapsed. Just fell to the ground, unconscious, bleeding from his nose and ears. We carried him to the vehicle. As we loaded him, I noticed something wrong with the ground. It was moving, not shaking like an earthquake, undulating like liquid. The sand was flowing in slow waves, buildings sinking slightly with each pulse of the hum. "What is this?" I demanded. "What's happening?" The guide was already in the driver's seat. "The vibration. It's a resonance frequency. Makes the sand act like liquid. The original miners discovered it. Certain sounds at certain frequencies turn the ground under this town into quicksand. That's why they abandoned it. The whole settlement was starting to sink." We drove away fast. In the rearview mirror, I watched the town slowly settling into the desert. Buildings tilting, leaning, their foundations undermined by sand that had turned to liquid. My sound engineer woke up in the hospital 3 hours later. He had a severe concussion, ruptured blood vessels in his nose and ears, and kept insisting he could still hear the hum. The doctor said it was trauma, that the sensation would fade. It's been over a year. He still hears it. So do I sometimes. That low-frequency vibration, just at the edge of perception. We did research after we recovered. The town we'd filmed wasn't Pueblo Fantasma. That was just what our guide called it. Its real name was Oficina Vibración, and it had a documented history that nobody had bothered to tell us about. In 1924, miners working there reported hearing a persistent hum. Within weeks, they started getting sick. Nosebleeds, headaches, visual distortions, shared hallucinations of seeing the mine still operating with phantom workers. Then people started disappearing. Not leaving, not running away. Disappearing. They'd go to sleep in the workers' barracks and vanish during the night. 17 people gone over a 3-week period. The remaining workers fled. But a rescue team went back for the missing miners. They found the town sinking, literally being swallowed by the desert. Buildings half submerged in sand that flowed like water. And they found bodies. Not the missing 17, hundreds of bodies in various states of preservation, buried in the sand beneath the town. The geological survey determined that the area sits on a massive salt flat. Under certain conditions, air pressure, temperature, seismic activity, the salt formations vibrate at a resonant frequency. This vibration turns the sand above it into a non-Newtonian fluid. The harder you try to move through it, the more solid it becomes. But if you stay still, you sink. The bodies they found dated back centuries. Indigenous peoples, Spanish colonists, early miners, all buried in the same area, all killed by the same phenomenon. The town had been built on top of a natural trap that had been killing people for thousands of years. After the 1924 incident, the government sealed the area. No one was supposed to go there. But records get lost, maps get updated, and guides looking for extra money take filmmakers to places they shouldn't go. We were lucky. We got out before the ground completely liquefied. But my sound engineer's equipment recorded everything, including frequencies below human hearing. When we analyzed the audio, we found something impossible. The hum wasn't random. It was rhythmic, patterned. And when we ran it through audio analysis software, the pattern matched human speech. Thousands of voices, talking over each other, all saying the same thing in different languages. They were warning us to leave. All those bodies buried beneath the town, still there after centuries, preserved by the dry desert air and salt, still vibrating with the resonance. Still trying to warn the living not to make the same mistake they made. My sound engineer can't work anymore. The constant hum in his head makes recording impossible. He says it's loudest at night, when everything else is quiet. He says sometimes he can almost make out words in it. Warnings in languages he doesn't speak, from people who died before he was born. I dream about the town sometimes. In the dreams, I'm standing in the street and the buildings are sinking around me. The ground is liquid under my feet, and I'm slowly going down. I try to run, but movement makes the sand solidify, trapping my legs. I can see the others who didn't leave, all those people from all those centuries, standing frozen in the sand, still vibrating at that frequency, still trying to warn anyone who'll listen. We never went back for the equipment. It's still there, in that town that's probably completely underground by now. My cameras, the sound equipment, all our gear, slowly sinking into the desert along with everything else that didn't leave in time. Sometimes I wonder if it's still recording. If somewhere beneath the Atacama Desert, there are cameras running on solar power, documenting the slow swallow of an entire town, recording the hum that never stops, capturing the vibration that turns solid ground to liquid and back again, a pulse that's been going on for thousands of years. And I wonder about the next filmmaker who goes there. Because the desert is vast, and guides need money, and there are always people looking for untouched locations. People who will ignore warnings, who will think they're different, who will stay just a little too long trying to get the perfect shot. I wonder if they'll hear the hum, if they'll feel the ground start to move beneath them, if they'll see the phantom workers in the windows, the buildings that look intact for just a moment, the desert that seems to remember when the town was alive. I wonder if they'll leave in time, or if they'll become part of the warning. Another voice in the vibration, another body in the sand, another person trying to tell the living what the dead already know. That some places should stay abandoned, that some silence isn't peaceful, it's waiting. And that sometimes, when the earth itself starts to hum, the only smart thing to do is run. I'm a storm chaser. Have been for 8 years. I've seen tornadoes that looked like they could swallow the sky, watched whole towns get erased in minutes, felt the air pressure drop so low my ears bled. You develop a relationship with storms when you chase them long enough. Respect, fear, and something close to love all mixed together. May 2020, I was tracking a supercell through Oklahoma. The meteorological setup was perfect for a major tornado. Moisture, instability, wind shear all coming together in a way that makes chasers like me drive 15 hours straight to be in position. By late afternoon, the storm had produced 3 tornadoes already. I was following the 4th one, an EF3 that was carving a path through empty farmland. Then my luck ran out. I was on a dirt road trying to get ahead of the tornado when my engine started knocking. Temperature gauge spiked into the red. I pulled over, popped the hood, and saw coolant spraying everywhere. Blown hose. The truck wasn't going anywhere. Behind me, maybe 2 miles back, the tornado was getting wider, darker. The sound was like a freight train mixed with a jet engine, a roar that made my chest vibrate. I had maybe 3 minutes before it reached me. That's when I saw the farmhouse. It was set back from the road, half hidden by overgrown trees. Abandoned by the look of it. Sagging roof, broken windows, paint long gone. But next to it was a storm cellar. The old-fashioned kind built into the ground with heavy wooden doors. In Tornado Alley, those cellars are everywhere. Relics from when every farm family needed a place to hide when the sky turned green. I ran for it. The wind was already picking up, throwing debris, making it hard to stay upright. I reached the cellar doors and pulled. They were heavy but not locked. I yanked them open and practically fell down the concrete steps, pulling the doors shut above me just as the roar became deafening. The cellar was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet. Concrete walls, dirt floor, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling that didn't work. My phone's flashlight showed empty shelves, some old canning jars, and nothing else. Just a box underground, exactly what I needed. The tornado passed over. I could hear it. The screaming wind, impacts as debris hit the doors above me, the whole structure shaking. It lasted about 90 seconds, then moved on. The sound faded, replaced by the aftermath silence that tornadoes leave behind. I waited a few minutes to be sure, then climbed the steps and pushed on the doors. They didn't budge. I pushed harder. Nothing. The doors were wood, old and weathered. They should have opened easily. I braced my shoulder against them and shoved with everything I had. They didn't move even a fraction of an inch. I pulled out my phone. No signal, which was normal in rural Oklahoma, even without a tornado. I tried the emergency satellite feature. Message wouldn't send. I was in a concrete box underground with no way to call for help. But people knew where I was. I checked in with my chase partner an hour ago, given him my position. When I didn't respond to his next check-in, he'd come looking. I just had to wait. I sat on the steps and used my phone's light to look around more carefully. That's when I noticed I wasn't the first person trapped down here. There were marks on the walls, scratches, like someone had clawed at the concrete, and words carved or written in something dark. I moved closer with my light. Day 3. Still can't open the doors. Why won't anyone come? My stomach dropped. I looked at another section of wall. Day 5. Tried screaming all night. No one hears. Water almost gone. Another spot, different handwriting. Day 2. Door won't open from inside. This is deliberate. Someone locked us in. And another. Day 7. Can hear people outside. They walk right past. Can't hear me screaming. Why can't they hear me? I counted 6 different sets of handwriting. 6 different people who'd taken shelter here and couldn't get out. The dates ranged across decades. Some messages from the 1960s based on the dates carved next to them, others more recent. The most recent was from 2019. Day 4. Found the others. Their bones are here, under the dirt. I'm so thirsty I can't think. The door is locked. Someone locked it from outside. Someone wants us to die here. I started digging in the corner where that message pointed. My hands hit something solid after a few inches. Bone. A skull, mostly buried, jaw hanging open. I jerked back and my light caught more shapes in the dirt. This wasn't a storm cellar. It was a tomb. I ran back up the steps and hammered on the doors. Help! Someone help! I'm trapped! I screamed until my throat was raw. Then I tried my phone again. Still no signal. I checked the battery, 73%. I had time. I made myself calm down and think. The doors opened outward. If debris had fallen on them during the tornado, they might be blocked. My chase partner would come looking, find my truck, see the cellar. I just needed to wait and conserve my energy. But I couldn't stop looking at those messages. 6 people, all trapped here after taking shelter from storms, all dying of dehydration, which takes about 3 days, all leaving messages about the door being locked, about people outside who couldn't hear them scream. I examined the doors from below. They were secured from the outside with a heavy metal latch, the kind you'd use to keep animals out, or to keep something in. But there was no mechanism to open them from inside. No handle, no latch, nothing. The doors were designed to only be opened from outside. That's when I understood. This wasn't a safety feature that had failed. This was intentional. This cellar was built as a trap. I searched more carefully, trying to stay rational. Found water bottles in the corner, 3 of them, placed neatly together. They were recent, not dusty. Someone had put them there. Recently. Someone who knew people would come here during storms. Someone who wanted to make sure they survived just long enough to understand what was happening to them. I checked my phone. 6 hours had passed since the tornado. My chase partner should have noticed I wasn't responding by now. Should have started looking. My truck was right there on the road. He'd find it. He had to find it. I tried to sleep but couldn't. The cellar was cold, and every time I closed my eyes, I thought about the bones under the dirt. 6 people over decades, all dying in this concrete box while the world went on above them. Around hour 12, I heard footsteps. Someone was walking above the cellar. I could hear boots on the ground, slow and deliberate. They walked around the doors, then stopped directly above them. "Help!" I screamed. "I'm trapped down here. Please help me." The footsteps continued, walking in a slow circle around the cellar. Then they stopped again, and I heard something that made my blood freeze. A voice, humming. Just humming a melody, like someone without a care in the world. "Please," I called up. "The doors are stuck. I can't get out. I need help." The humming stopped. Silence for a long moment. Then a voice, male and calm. "Door's not stuck. Works just fine." "Then open it. I've been trapped since the tornado." "I know. I saw your truck on the road. Wondered how long before you'd find the cellar." A pause. "You're the 5th one this year. Storm season's been good." My mind went blank with horror. "What do you want?" "Money. I have money. Just let me out." "Don't want your money. Just want you to understand something." His voice was patient, almost kind. "People come out here chasing storms, thinking they're brave, thinking they understand nature's power. But you don't understand anything. You drive through our land, tear up our roads, treat our homes like tourist attractions. Someone needs to teach you what real storms feel like. Please, please don't do this. You'll have about 3 days. Water's there if you ration it right. You can leave messages on the walls if you want. The others did. I like reading them after. Helps me understand what you're all thinking about when you realize nobody's coming." His footsteps walked away. I screamed, hammered on the doors, begged. But he was gone. I tried my phone again. Still no signal. The battery was at 51%. I turned it off to conserve power and sat in the dark, trying to think. My chase partner knew my last position. He'd come looking. The truck was visible from the road. He'd find it, call the police, they'd search the area. They'd find the cellar. But how many other chasers had thought the same thing? How many had sat here, confident they'd be rescued, only to slowly realize that help wasn't coming? I checked my phone again. 18 hours had passed. I turned on the video camera and recorded a message, explaining where I was and what had happened. Uploaded it to cloud storage, hoping it would sync once I got signal. If I got signal. The water bottles stared at me from the corner. 3 bottles. 3 days. I thought about the messages on the walls, the progression from confidence to fear to desperation to acceptance. I thought about the bones under the dirt. 6 people who'd made the same assumptions I was making. Around hour 30, I heard vehicles. Multiple vehicles, moving past on the road. I screamed until I couldn't scream anymore. Hammered on the doors until my hands bled. The vehicles kept driving. They weren't looking for me. Or they couldn't hear me. Or they thought the cellar was just another abandoned structure in a landscape full of them. I started my own message on the wall, using a piece of metal I found in the corner. Day 1. My name. The date. What happened. I wanted to believe I wouldn't need it, that I'd be rescued and could show police the evidence. But I carved it anyway. By day 2, I'd finished the first water bottle. My phone's battery was at 23%. I'd been recording video logs, trying to document everything. The messages, the bones, the door mechanism, evidence. I could hear people outside sometimes. Cars passing, someone yelling in the distance, once what sounded like a tractor. But no one came to the cellar. Why would they? It was just an old storm shelter on abandoned property. Nothing worth checking. Day 3. The rational part of my brain was shutting down. I knew the signs of severe dehydration, confusion, lethargy, the feeling that your skin doesn't fit right. I'd watched enough survival documentaries. 3 days without water and your kidneys start failing. I had 1 bottle left. My phone died around hour 68. The last thing I recorded was a message to my family. Told them I loved them. Told them to find this place and make sure the man who did this was caught. Described him, the voice, the words, everything I could remember. Then darkness. Real darkness. The kind where you can't see your hand in front of your face. I don't know how long I've been here now. I carved day 4 on the wall, but I'm not sure if that's accurate. Time gets strange in the dark. Sometimes I hear footsteps above. Sometimes I hear nothing. Sometimes I hear the other voices, the other people who died here, calling out in the darkness. The water's gone. I understand now why they carved messages. It's the only thing left that proves you existed, that you were here, that you didn't just disappear into the storm like dust. If you find this place, if you find me, know that I tried. I tried to get out. I tried to call for help. I tried everything. But the door was locked. The door was always locked. And the man who locked it is still out there, waiting for the next storm season, waiting for the next person who thinks they understand tornadoes, waiting to teach them what it really means to be caught in a storm you can't escape. I'm a telecommunications technician. My job is maintaining the network of relay stations scattered across remote parts of Australia. Those unmanned towers that keep your phone working even when you're in the middle of nowhere. Most of the time, it's routine work. Replace equipment, check solar panels, update firmware, leave. The stations run themselves. I'm just there to make sure they keep running. In January 2024, I got a maintenance ticket for Station 47 Delta in the Tanami Desert, Northern Territory. The system showed it was offline for scheduled maintenance, but it was still transmitting. Not possible. When a station goes offline, everything shuts down. But the logs showed continuous transmission for 3 days, broadcasting on multiple frequencies using bandwidth that should have been impossible. The drive out there took 6 hours from Alice Springs. Station 47 Delta sits in one of the most isolated parts of the desert, 60 miles from the nearest dirt road. It's just a 30-foot tower with equipment boxes and solar panels, surrounded by red sand and spinifex grass stretching to the horizon in every direction. I arrived around 2 p.m. The heat was murderous, 117 degrees Fahrenheit. The air's shimmering, the kind of heat that makes you understand why people die out here. I parked in the tower's shadow and checked the equipment cabinet. Everything looked normal from the outside. Then I heard my phone ring. Not unusual. I kept a satellite phone for emergencies. But when I checked, The screen showed an incoming call from my own number. My phone was calling itself. I answered it. Silence, then a voice. My voice. Don't go to the station. Get in your truck and drive away. You have about 30 minutes before it's too late. The call disconnected. I stood there in the heat, looking at my phone, trying to rationalize what I'd just heard. Spoofed number, obviously. Some kind of prank or hacker. But the voice was exactly mine. Same accent, same vocal patterns, same slight rasp from years of smoking I'd quit 5 years ago. I walked to the tower. The equipment boxes were humming, which they shouldn't have been. The station was supposed to be offline. I opened the main panel and checked the logs on the diagnostic screen. The station had been transmitting continuously for 72 hours. Voice data, text messages, emergency calls, thousands of transmissions, all originating from this tower. But when I checked the source numbers, my stomach dropped. They were all my number. Every single transmission was coming from my phone, according to the logs. But my phone had been with me the entire time, in my pocket, definitely not making thousands of calls. I pulled the transmission logs to review the content. The system had recorded everything: calls, texts, data. I opened the most recent file. It was a voice message. My voice, speaking to emergency services. This is a distress call from Station 47 Delta. I'm a telecom technician. I came for maintenance 3 days ago, and I can't leave. Something's wrong with the station. It's transmitting things I'm not saying. Using my voice to make calls I'm not making. I need immediate extraction. Please respond. The timestamp showed this message was sent yesterday, but I'd only arrived an hour ago. I scrolled through more logs. All of them were me, calling for help, describing my situation, begging for rescue. The messages spanned the next 18 days, each one more desperate than the last. The final transmission, dated 19 days from now, was just screaming. My voice screaming continuously for 40 seconds, then cutting off. I backed away from the panel. This had to be some kind of system error. File corruption, timeline glitch, something technical that had a rational explanation. But I'd been doing this job for 12 years. I knew what corrupted data looked like. This wasn't corruption. This was a record of what was going to happen. I walked back to my truck, keys already in hand. I was leaving. Protocol could go to hell. I'd file a report saying the station needed specialized maintenance. Let someone else deal with whatever was wrong here. My truck wouldn't start. The engine turned over but wouldn't catch. I tried again and again. Nothing. I popped the hood, checked everything I could think of. Mechanically, everything looked fine. The truck just wouldn't start. My satellite phone rang again. My number. I answered. You can't leave. My own voice, calm and matter-of-fact. The station needs you here. It's been waiting. Who is this? You know who this is. You're talking to yourself. Specifically, you're talking to the version of yourself that's been here for 3 weeks. The one that's almost finished dying of dehydration. The one that's been making these calls, trying to warn you, trying to change what happens. But it doesn't change. It never changes. I hung up. Tried to call emergency services myself. The phone connected but produced only static. I could hear the operator asking me to speak. But they couldn't hear me. Just like the transmission logs had shown, I could hear out. But nothing I said would reach anyone. I examined the tower more carefully. The equipment looked standard. But when I opened the secondary panel, I found something that shouldn't exist. Extra circuitry, modifications that weren't in any manual. Wiring that led down into the ground, into the sand beneath the tower. I followed the wires. They went down about 6 feet, into a space that had been excavated beneath the station's foundation. And in that space was equipment I'd never seen before. Servers, transmitters, recording devices, all running on power they shouldn't have had access to. And bones. Human bones scattered in the sand. A skull still wearing a telecommunications company cap. I climbed out of that hole fast, my mind refusing to process what I'd seen. Someone had died here. Someone had been buried under the station, and someone had installed equipment to record them, to capture their final transmissions, to preserve their death. My phone buzzed. Text message from my number. Check the recording devices. See what they captured from the others. I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, start hiking toward the highway, take my chances with the desert heat. But I needed to understand. I went back down into the excavation and accessed the recording servers. Files going back 6 years. 7 different phone numbers. 7 different technicians who'd come to this station for maintenance and never left. I opened the first file. A woman's voice calling emergency services, explaining that her truck wouldn't start and she was stranded at Station 47 Delta. The call was dated 6 years ago. I looked up her name in the company database. She'd been reported missing in January 2018. Last known location, Station 47 Delta. Her body was never found because it was here, under the station, along with 6 others. I opened more files, all the same pattern. Technician arrives for maintenance. Truck won't start. Phone works, but nobody can hear them. They spend days calling for help, leaving messages, begging for rescue. The transmissions get more desperate, more confused as dehydration sets in. Then they stop. And now my phone was doing the same thing. Broadcasting my voice, my calls for help, my increasing desperation. Recording everything for whoever came next. I tried to destroy the equipment. Smashed the servers with a wrench from my toolkit. But my phone kept transmitting. The tower above kept broadcasting. The system was distributed, backed up, impossible to stop without tools I didn't have. The sun was setting. Temperature dropping fast. Desert nights get cold. I had maybe 2 liters of water in my truck, 3 days if I rationed carefully. Same as the others. My phone rang continuously through the night. Sometimes it was emergency services calling back, asking for my location, saying they were sending help. But I knew they weren't really calling. The station was generating these calls, using recordings of real operators, creating hope to keep me here instead of trying to walk out. Other times, it was my own voice from the future, describing what was happening to me. Day 3. Severe dehydration. Can't think straight. Day 7. Hallucinations. Seeing rescue vehicles that aren't there. Day 15. Accepting that nobody's coming. I tried to walk out on day 2. Made it about 5 miles before I had to turn back. The heat was too intense, the water going too fast. I'd die on the walk long before I reached help. By day 4, I understood why the others had stayed near the station. At least here there was shade from the tower. At least here the equipment kept running, providing some sense of connection to the world, even if the connection was a lie. I spent my time listening to the recordings. 7 technicians before me. All dying here, all leaving the same desperate messages. And I was adding to the collection. My voice, calling everyone I knew, explaining my situation, begging them to send help to Station 47 Delta. But my company's logs showed the station was offline for maintenance. Showed I'd checked in, completed the work, and left. Someone had altered the records. Someone wanted to make sure that when I didn't return, there'd be no urgency to look for me. Day 8. The water's gone. I'm writing this in the sand because my phone's battery is dying. Tomorrow or the next day, I'll be like the others. Just bones under the station with my voice still transmitting, still calling for help that will never come. I finally understand what this place is. It's not a relay station for telecommunications. It's a relay station for something else. Something that feeds on desperation, on the human need to communicate, to connect, to be heard. Something that's been here long before the tower was built. The Aboriginal people who lived here called this area different names. One of them translates roughly to the place where voices go to die. My phone just received another call from myself. 19 days from now, the final transmission. I'm going to answer it. I want to hear what I sound like at the end. I want to know if I'm still trying to warn people or if I've accepted it by then. If you're reading this, if you're a technician sent to maintain Station 47 Delta, don't come. Report the station as unsalvageable and recommend decommissioning. The coordinates are wrong anyway. It's not where the company thinks it is. It moves. The tower moves, and you'll only find it if it wants you to. And if you do find it, if you're standing here reading these words scratched in the sand near the foundation, get in your vehicle and leave. Don't check the equipment. Don't try to fix anything. Just go. Because your phone is already transmitting. Your voice is already calling for help. And in 3 weeks, you'll be adding your bones to the collection beneath the tower, your voice joining the chorus of the others, still calling, still begging, still believing that someone might finally hear you. But nobody hears us. Nobody ever hears us. We just keep transmitting into the void, our voices bouncing off satellites and towers, traveling the world, reaching everyone except the people who could actually save us. The station sees to that.